She stood there, smiling warmly as she waved me off. I tried to return the gesture, but my body felt frozen. My mind was still reeling, too overwhelmed by the revelation to match her serene farewell. Her words had answered some long-standing questions, but in doing so, they unearthed even more.
All this time, Alphonse? My tutor?
My grandfather. I mumbled under my breath, still stunned. Mother always called him Alphonse, and so did I. They rarely showed overt affection, just occasional hints of familiarity. I never suspected they were family. The confusion gnawed at me as I turned my gaze to the book Annabelle had handed me before I left. The worn leather cover felt warm under my fingers as I traced its edge, trying to ground myself. There had to be a reason they kept this from me. Gradually, my racing thoughts began to settle. I looked out the window one last time. Annabelle was still there, standing alongside a few household members who had come to see me off. Most of the staff, however, were busy dealing with the aftermath of Liliana's death, investigating, repairing, recovering. There had been no grand send-off, no emotional farewell, but that was fine.
This was enough.
The manor slowly faded into the distance, shrinking into the horizon. From this perspective, everything looked smaller, less imposing. Eventually, I lost sight of Annabelle, and even the silhouette of my home blurred into the scenery. I smiled faintly and pulled my head back inside the carriage. I'm getting sentimental, aren't I? I shook off the lingering emotions and sat up straighter. The book, I whispered, glancing down at the gift. Let's see what Alphonse, or should I say grandfather, left for me. No, I thought with a small chuckle. Calling him that still feels strange. As I opened the book, I noticed a neatly placed envelope on the first page. It bore a crimson wax seal, noble, refined. A seal used only by aristocrats or powerful magical families. Annabelle's family, of course. It makes sense that Alphonse would be someone of high standing. Curiosity nudged me forward. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter carefully. The parchment was unlike anything I'd handled before, luxurious to the touch, soft yet firm.
And then I began to read.
Dear Jared, how have you been? By the time you read this, you'll likely be en route to Ainslark Academy. Knowing Annabelle, she probably handed you this book just before your departure, cutting it close, as always. Sigh, that woman. It hasn't been long since I left the Leonard estate, yet I already miss you and your mother. There are a few important things I want to share, so please read this carefully. First, the book you're holding is my gift to you. It contains mixtures, potions, medicines, and yes, even poisons.
Be cautious.
You once showed interest in curing your mother's mana shock, and knowing your curiosity, I suspect that was only the beginning. To help you continue your research, I've compiled my personal records. I trust they'll serve you far better than any dusty spellbook. Second, and perhaps more importantly, Jared, I am your grandfather. Yes, Alphonse Gerald IV of the Alphonse household.
I am your mother's father.
You were never lied to, nor was anything deliberately hidden from you. It simply never came up. In our family, titles and relationships shift with circumstance and achievement. When Annabelle earned her title as a full-fledged magic user, she became my peer. From that moment, we addressed each other by name, not by blood. Similarly, I treated you as my student, not as my grandson, because that was the role you required at the time. Once your training was complete and you began walking the path of a mage, I recognized you as a fellow practitioner of the art. Our bond changed, as it always does in our family. But if you look at your full name, Jared Leonard Alphonse Sereth you'll see the proof. The Alphonse, within it is no coincidence. It signifies the alliance between our two households. Annabelle was given in marriage to your father to cement that bond, and you were born as the living proof of that union. I know this is a lot to take in, especially for someone your age. But I also know you're no ordinary child, Jared. You never have been. You're someone destined for great things. And I hope, I believe, that you'll carry both family legacies with pride. As my student, and as my grandson, I await the stories of your triumphs at Ainslark. Take care of yourself. Alphonse Gerald IV. The journey to Ainslark Academy was expected to take anywhere from 5 to 7 days by carriage, even under good weather conditions. The long duration was due to the sheer distance between our estate and the academy's location. Though we belonged to a prestigious noble line, my father being a duke, our territory was situated far from the Eastern Kingdom's bustling cities.
How absurd was that?
Because of this, my father frequently spent long stretches away from home. It would have been inefficient to constantly travel back and forth between our remote lands and the administrative centers he needed to frequent. So, as a result of some ancient decision, perhaps even political strategy, our lineage was entrusted with managing these distant, sprawling lands. I never really minded.
The upside?
We rarely had guests. And even at 12 years old, I'd never once stepped foot beyond our territory. As a naturally reclusive sort, I had no complaints. Still, those quiet days were now behind me. The real world beckoned. Despite reading countless stories and absorbing every word from Alphonse and Annabelle's tales, stepping into unfamiliar territory was a different beast entirely. A nervous chill crept through me. Thankfully, we were well prepared. Detailed maps had been laid out, our travel route carefully planned, and lodging at various inns prearranged.
A logistical masterpiece.
Still, part of me couldn't help but sigh. If only long-range teleportation magic existed. It did technically, but only for short distances, and it demanded a tremendous amount of mana and precision. A rare art, too complex for most. Maybe one day, I thought, smiling to myself.
He.
It's strange how endless 5 days can feel when you're sitting in a cramped carriage the entire time. We stopped occasionally to stretch our legs and rest, but most of our time was spent bouncing along dusty roads. My rear end protested the entire journey. To pass the time, I delved into the book Alphonse had given me. It was fascinating, full of formulas, theories, and techniques I couldn't wait to try out. But that was the problem. Reading was one thing. Practicing? Impossible while being jostled around in a carriage. I attempted meditation to calm my growing itch to cast something, anything. I even tried forming my fourth mana core, but the constant wobbling and noise made it nearly impossible. Eventually, I gave up. Day by day, the scenery blurred into the same monotony, until finally, on the 7th day, we reached our destination. "Young master, we've arrived, the academic city, Ainslark," my coachman announced with no small amount of relief. I wasn't the only one glad this ordeal was over. If anything, I felt more sorry for the coachman. He'd handled the reins the entire way. My guards, ever silent, didn't even seem real at times. Probably just following orders, I mused absently. But all of that vanished from my mind as I turned to the view outside. Massive city walls loomed ahead, unlike anything I had ever seen in our secluded domain. We had passed many cities en route, each more impressive than the last, but this was something else entirely. Amazing. I blurted out, unable to contain my excitement. In my past life, such towering structures were reserved for palaces or ancient temples. Yet here they were, dotting the skyline as far as my eyes could see. Tall spires, glimmering domes, and arcane architecture that made my heart pound. Even the coachman seemed to chuckle. Maybe I imagined it, but I swore I heard him sigh in relief again. Security at the gate looked strict, but we passed through smoothly. The coachman must have been prepared for this. As we entered the city proper, my eyes widened at the vibrant world outside the window. Shops, libraries, cafes, magical supply stores, each one full of life and character. This was a place of learning and wonder, clearly built to cater to scholars, adventurers, and mages alike. My senses were overwhelmed in the best way possible. Then, the coachman spoke again, snapping me from my awe. "Shall we proceed directly to the academy, young master?"
I paused.
Truth be told, I wanted to explore, badly.
But I knew better.
Everyone must have been exhausted. I was the reason it took 7 full days to arrive, after all. All those breaks, all those detours. I couldn't inconvenience them further. "Yes," I replied, nodding with a smile.
"Let's go.
Time to see where I'll be studying." With that, we rolled deeper into the city, the carriage now moving leisurely along paved roads lined with stone and enchanted lanterns. People turned their heads to look at our decorated transport, whispering as we passed. And then finally we turned a corner, and I saw it. A colossal building came into view, towering above the rest. Ornate, sprawling, and unmistakably majestic, it was the Ainslark Academy. I had seen sketches, diagrams, and even magical illusions of the place, but nothing compared to witnessing it in the flesh. It stole my breath. Even from this distance, I could feel the ancient, powerful aura radiating from its walls. The pride of the Eastern Kingdom, its premier institution for magical education. "This is it," whispered. "Ainslark Academy."
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Ainslark Academy. When considering the epitome of power and ability, a person had to possess some form of education in whatever art or craft they possessed. As the institute that stands above every other in the Eastern Kingdom, Where I hail from, Ainslark is the dream of anyone who aims for the top. And there I was, standing before the gates of such a prestigious place. Having such a magnificent shiny white surface, the large gate leading to the academy resembled a castle on its own. The towering building seemed to touch the clouds as the white gates stayed before it. A flight of stairs leading to the gates was cleanly arranged, waiting for us to climb. My coachman halted the carriage as we approached the gate, making a turn by the side so the horses stopped moving. Since it was directly beside the stairs leading to the higher platform where the gate was, I had no difficulty getting off. As soon as I got down, the 2 guards who served as my escorts did the same and walked beside me. The coachman nodded affirmatively at me, and I responded to his courteous expression. "Have a safe and productive time, young master," he said, before driving off with the carriage. I was certain the guards would meet up with him at a rendezvous point after escorting me as far as they could to where I would be spending the next few years. Upon reaching the gate, we were met by elite guards. They were 3 in number, 2 holding swords and a single one dressed in garb. From his outfit, I already deduced him to be a mage, and a very skilled one at that. For only 3 personnel to serve as guards of such a prestigious place, it clearly meant they weren't ordinary. After showing them the deed and seal of my noble family, as well as the enrollment offer letter already requested got in the academy, the guards gave their approval and allowed me in. With a sleight of hand made by the mage among the 3 guards, a remarkable phenomenon occurred. I watched the gates open as a result of whatever magic the mage cast. A glimmer of faint light emanated from the bars, causing them to rise and granting us access within the academy compound. "You are to head directly to the admissions processing department. Keep walking straight down this path, you can't miss them,"
we were told.
The guards nodded, not offering a single word, while I offered my thanks. Upon entering, we were greeted with yet another marvelous sight. A vast compound with several buildings across the area. A large fountain stood erect at the center of everything, while several structures made the huge place hardly vacant. As we walked down, following the instructions given, I couldn't get enough of the sight. Still, it was strange. While I spotted a few individuals, the academy was not as packed as I imagined it to be. Maybe I'll ask them at the admissions department. My thoughts trailed. Just as the guard said, we were able to spot the admissions processing department easily after taking a few moments to walk down the straight path. The building stood out well, greatly furnished from the exterior and having the signpost clearly telling whoever passed by of the business they performed. The interior was even more impressive, greatly decorated to appear plain, yet exquisite. The room was also large, having only a few desks and a counter where we approached. "Good afternoon, how may I be of service?" Our attendant, a middle-aged man, asked with a sincere smile. "Even their service is satisfactory," I reasoned, wondering if there was any flaw in this educational system. "Yes. I would like to begin my studies within this academy. All the necessary processes have been sorted out," I said, bringing out the documents I had shown the guards. Upon receiving what I gave him, the middle-aged man scrutinized the seal of my household and the deed containing an introductory letter from my family. Most importantly, I also had the academy's enrollment offer letter with me. "HMMN, these are all valid," he muttered, rubbing his cleanly shaven chin. I was a little surprised by the reason he was so flippant about the validity of the documents. Even the guards didn't take any special process in ensuring we weren't with any counterfeit. It's not impossible to try pulling a fast one on establishments like this. Why aren't they more serious about investigating if my documents are valid? I questioned internally. The man attending to us must have read my expression, since the next thing he did was smile at me and nod slightly. "If you're wondering why we aren't being a little more serious about investigating the genuineness of your documents, it's because there is no need to." I was a little stunned by the man's words. Fortunately, he proceeded to explain himself. "The letter sent by the academy is made from a special kind of parchment that can only be gotten here and is enchanted with a secret spell, changed every year, with only those in the know who are aware of it. As such, no one can duplicate them. The moment I came into contact with the letter, I already knew it was valid." I slightly let out, a little embarrassed that I didn't think of that. "Plus, the seal of your noble family carries similar properties. Even if the form is replicated, the magic signature can never be. As a result, we know you are the genuine article." The man smiled. Impressed by his words, I nodded in response. "I see. Forgive me for doubting your security and observation skills." No. It's no issue. I'm glad you took an interest. Most wouldn't even be bothered about it," the middle-aged man said. Afterward, he brought out a form and told me to fill it out. Information such as my name, age, family, mana core, and the likes were requested. I filled the form quickly, making my mana print where it was indicated, and returned it to him. He placed his hand on it and chanted a spell silently, duplicating the form into 2 identical copies. "Here, take this and hold on to it well," he said, giving me one of the copies. What is this for?"
I mumbled.
"It's a means of identification. After all, this letter you received from the Academy is a mere enrollment offer document. It doesn't mean you have been wholly accepted yet,"
he said. I nodded.
Anyone could understand that much if they studied about the Ainslark Academy. It was one thing to be offered enrollment, and it was another to be fully enrolled in the Academy.
That's right.
The entrance exams are coming up, so this is for that time. As a participant, that is your means of identification. Since you've shown me all the relevant documents, you do not need them anymore. That alone is enough,"
he added. I see.
Observing the form closely, I saw the date of the exams printed on the back. It was barely a week from now.
You have good eyes.
That's right, you still have a bit of time before the exams actually take place. That means you've arrived too early.
Oh?
That must be why everywhere isn't as crowded as I thought. It's good that you arrived early and got this process over with, though. Others have come before you, but most usually arrive when it's a day or so before the actual exams. The middle-aged man made a dissatisfied expression, indicating he thought those kinds were troublesome. I didn't blame him, though. The crowd and pressure were bound to increase at an unbelievable rate since so many wanted their processing done at the last minute. I'd advise you to head over to an inn and wait things out. If you have any further business to attend to, also do so. In 6 days, return to the Academy to take your entrance exams. The venue has been given on the form, so there's no confusion. Thank you, I appreciate this. I smiled at the kind gentleman. He nodded politely. Now then, you may have these back, the man said, returning the documents I submitted to him. Upon collecting them, I took a few moments to observe them and make sure nothing was tampered with. After I was done, I handed everything over to my escorts, keeping the form within my breast pocket. I believe our business here is concluded. Well then, you should be on your way, the middle-aged man said. I smiled, looking at him with a little bit of interest. Would you mind telling me your name? My sudden question caused the stares of the other workers who sat at their respective positions. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Even the man I addressed was a little flustered by my question. After taking a brief moment to consider, looking at my confident eyes, he gave in. My name is Legris Damien, he said. Thank you. You know already, but it's common courtesy to return an introduction. I am Jared Leonard. It's a pleasure. He bowed his head slightly, and I did the same. Well then, excuse us as we take our leave, I said, walking out of the office with my escorts. We left the building, which was yet silent, but I was not bothered in the slightest. My guards were the same, so it was no new thing. Young master, the coachman has already gone to secure the appropriate inn for you. Since it's a trustworthy place befitting of your repute, we will be heading there now, one of my guards said while we walked back to the gate. It was a shame I was leaving such a beautiful place so soon, but I would be back. Ah, I see. Let us go then. I smiled, glancing a little in his direction. From the corner of my eye, I noticed the second escort looking a little peculiar, almost as though he wanted to say something. What's on your mind? I asked with slight curiosity. He remained mute, slightly shaking his head. I didn't know whether he was just being shy or rigid, but it still felt weird. I already had an idea of what he wanted to say, though. You're curious about the reason I behaved strangely in that office just now, right? I spoke more than I should have, treated someone with a far lower status cordially, and even requested for his name. You want to know the reason why, right? I asked. After taking a few moments of hesitation, the guard nodded his head. A smile formed on my face. Maybe my guards hadn't noticed it yet, but there was no way that man could fool me. The answer is simple: that mere attendant is very strong. A smile formed on my face as the gates were opened for us, allowing us to exit. Legris Damien. I'm not going to forget that name. Ha 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 ha, what an interesting fellow. The man called Legris burst out laughing. This slightly startled the people who worked around him. Sir Legris, come on. Please control yourself. One of the workers made a slightly upset comment. The reason we even allowed this farce is because you said it wouldn't disturb our work. Another commented. Sigh, I knew this was a bad idea. One other worker slapped his hand on his face. You guys are no fun at all. Legris Damien beamed energetically. What was the reason for his good mood? It was none other than the young man who had just left. "What an interesting kid," he muttered.
Is he really?
He seemed just like any regular noble to me. His manner wasn't too impressive as well.
Someone made a passing comment.
Legris grinned at the one who said that.
Oh?
"So that's what you think? Well, I can't say I blame you. That was also what I thought as well. However, that kid, not only was he curious as to our criteria for judging genuine documents, he was also wary of the enrollment process, objectively scrutinizing his documents when they were returned to him." Legris said. The workers looked at each other. True, those were peculiar traits, but that wasn't enough to prove the boy special. As much as he tried to hide it, I could also tell, he was probing at my strength. "That lad is more than he seems,"
Legris added.
"True, he even asked for your name, Sir Legris." The middle-aged man nodded, excitedly snapping his fingers. "Exactly. He's the first to do all that." Legris had taken a keen interest in the child he just met. However, despite all he was just shown, there was one thing that stood out the most. Still, to think he's a pure white core at this age. Awakened at 7 years. And from the Leonard family that hasn't produced a magic user in over 200 years. Interesting. Legris Damien muttered, still stroking his chin. "No matter, we will meet soon again, Jared Leonard. Let's hope you pass the exams. Now I have one more thing to look forward to." As expected, the inn had already been secured by my coachman, and the establishment was a pretty decent one. Since I didn't want to raise too high a profile, we rented 2 rooms. The rooms were fitted for 2 people, so one of my guards shared one with me, while the other was occupied by my coachman and the second guard. It was clean, spacious, and most importantly, quiet. The next 6 days should be over in a breeze. I grinned, taking a seat by the study that was located in a corner of the room. It appeared the inn owner thought of everything. Just as expected, the days went by quickly. Fortunately, the guards were usually outside or in the other room, patrolling and keeping a safe distance from mine while respecting my privacy. We only slept in the same room at night, but for the rest of the time, I was granted total freedom within the little space I was given. Food was provided for me after a thorough inspection by the guards in case of poisons, but I didn't mind. It was for my protection, anyway. Of course, I also checked the food for poisons myself. The more I familiarized myself with the book Alphonse gave me, the more I came to respect medicines and also regard poisons. Using my alone time wisely, I spent it accumulating knowledge and circulating the mana within me on a few occasions. After most of the days passed, I decided to take a break from seriousness and enjoy myself a little, though for me research was also enjoyable in certain ways. "I would like to take a look around the city," I explained to my guards. With the next day being the Ainslark entrance examinations, this would prove the best time to explore the city of Ainslark. After all, things would get busier after I got into the academy. As expected, it was an exciting place. The academic city of Ainslark. During my studies, I came to realize that this city was the 3rd largest in all of the Eastern Kingdom. The first was the capital, and the second was the merchant city. The academic city took 3rd place and stood as one of the firm grounds for the kingdom's power. As such, it was easy to deduce why I was so thrilled by the experience of burning the sights of every activity around into my eyes. Of course, this wasn't the only reason. My guards maintained a considerable distance from me in order not to draw attention to myself.
Good grief, I sighed.
Enjoying the evening breeze cooled the excitement that had built up these past couple of days since tomorrow would be the big day. I was going to savor every moment. However, this tranquility didn't last long. "TCH out of the way, plebeian," I heard someone say from behind me. Before I could even turn around to see who the stranger was referring to, he bumped into me. No, it was more like a push. Not caring at all about my well-being, this person used his weight and shoved me to the side while hurrying his way. My eyes darted behind me and I saw my guards glare from a distance. With a sleight of hand, I signaled to them to stop displaying their animosity. They obeyed, and I quickly comported myself, once again walking down the busy road. "It's no big deal. It would be childish to fret over something of this level," I whispered. Judging from his demeanor, he was most likely one of the people Legris Damien spoke of. It was evening, yet some students like him hadn't gotten their forms for tomorrow's exams. With that fleeting thought, I continued my walk and soon returned to my chamber. Even with the unpleasant interruption I had, it was still an enjoyable experience.
Now then,
I wonder what tomorrow will give me. It was outstanding, to say the least, the examination venue. A very large building, resembling any educational structure for learning. Yet, this was merely a single hall in the whole academic grounds. The guards couldn't escort me any further, so we had to say our goodbyes by the gate. Of course, since I had made it this far, all that was left was getting into the main academy itself.
You should all head back home, I said to them.
After all, if I gained admission, I would immediately get lodged into the residential halls and go through orientation, and I was most likely not going to step out of school grounds for a while. But, young master, we should stay until the exams are over. Just in case one of the guards tried protesting.
In case what? I fail. I smiled.
Such an inconceivable idea being considered by an attendant of mine.
It was absurd.
I was shocked and flushed with embarrassment. And no, that's not what I meant. The flustered guard muttered quickly, bowing his head. During the short time we spent together, I made sure to converse with my attendants as much as possible. They're good kids, they just have poor communication skills. I smiled, looking at things from my perspective. Both guards decided to place their faith in their young master and promised to depart to the manor. With the academy's security and my assured victory, there was no need for them to stick around. My eyes caught the multitude of people entering the examination hall, so I knew I couldn't be caught loitering for too long.
Now then,
I should go in as well.
It was a coliseum.
The moderator, whoever he was standing at the center of the large stage, while everyone else watched from their seat round about the arena. A total of 5,350 students obtained a form for this exam. A huge number of you are here to be admitted into this prestigious institute. However, you must understand that of so many people gathered here, not more than 100 will ever see the inner walls of the main academy. This was met by a shocking response from the audience. We were never told this, not even in the texts and prospectus given out by the academy. However, if one was really observant, this much was to be expected. As the best of the best, clearly, Ainslark Academy would only aim for the most talented and powerful. Still, one thing caught my attention. The moderator mentioned over 5,000 people registering for the exam. However, from the calculations I made of the seats and their arrangements, there should only be a total of 4,000 gathered here at the maximum. Maybe there are other batches, I reasoned. If that was the case, then why didn't they split the crowd more evenly? 4,000 people participating in the first batch and 1,000 plus in the second. That seemed uneven. Perhaps there was a special way they used to split the batches that I wasn't aware of. Well, this was Ainslark Academy, I couldn't exactly expect something normal. Now then, I should inform you of the requirements for this exam. Of course, there are 3 major stages you need to pass before you can be admitted. Another outcry of surprise filled the air as thousands of students expressed surprise. Even I was a little surprised by this. I only know of 2 tests, my thoughts trailed. In the past years, we implemented 2 stages to pass. The written tests and the magic proficiency tests. However, after a slight educational reform within the academy, from this point on, a new test will be given which will determine not only your admission into the academy, but also your status once you've become a student. My eyes bulged as I listened. This was new, but not entirely unreasonable. I had already expected some discrepancies, so it wasn't too much. The third test will be the Mana Core Grade Proficiency Test. My jaw instantly dripped and the heart that was calm moments ago nearly jumped out of my chest. What? Of everything the academy would pull, I wasn't expecting this. Remember this, aspiring students, there is no such thing as equality in this world, especially when it comes to magic. As I heard the moderator, while he didn't directly say it, I understood what he meant. The third test was the most important since it would determine one's status in the academy. Plus, with the talk of inequality, I would be foolish to expect any leniency in this test. I had come into this place with absolute confidence. However, what remained were merely shards of the guarantee within my heart. After all, I possessed a pure white mana core grade, and in a test that tested one's proficiency based on that decisive factor, it could only mean one thing for someone like me. I'm screwed. Now then, without further ado, we'll begin the first phase of the test. The moderator beamed, not even giving me enough time to sort through my thoughts. The man snapped his fingers, creating a loud clicking sound. I winced a little reacting to the sudden noise. However, my eyes suddenly caught something in front of me. This is a piece of paper, I muttered, looking at the clear white sheet in front of me. You should all have received pieces of paper, 1 page each, correct? The mod announced. My eyes darted across the room beside me, beneath, across the other side, and true to his words, everyone had indeed received the same piece of floating paper like me. With the snap of a finger, impressive, my thoughts trailed. Or so it would seem. However, it was a simple trick once you figured it out. To think the academy resorted to such petty methods to impress students. You are to pick up the paper before you. Written on it is a simple question. The paper is enchanted and responds to mana.
You don't need a pen to write.
Use your fingers and answer the questions written on the paper before you. Everyone mechanically obeyed his instructions, picking up the paper to read the questions. Sure enough, his words were true. I would desist from engaging in any form of malpractice since this place is being monitored entirely. Also, the questions assigned for every examinee are different and the time allocated for this stage is 5 minutes. The bewildered students expressed their displeasure concerning the sudden rush of information. However, the moderator wasn't even going to give anyone room to breathe. Your time starts now. Everyone instantly buried their faces in the paper allocated to them and answered the questions in the way they knew best. I paused for a moment to analyze all that had occurred. If Ainslark Academy had taught me anything, it would that I was never to expect anything simple or straightforward from them. This written test was no different. The flow of mana within the body is something any magic user can sense. However, controlling that flow from one's mana core is a different story entirely. To do that, you need to be focused and calm, I reasoned. The reason why no pen was provided was to test our apt use of mana in answering the questions given. The questions weren't all that difficult for anyone who studied well. That meant the true test was the ability to keep one's cool while focusing on mana usage in correctly answering the question while being under the pressure of time.
It all adds up.
When you think of it that way, the first stage becomes very easy to overcome.
I grinned. 5 minutes? Ha! How laughable.
I won't even need one. Okay, time's up. Before anyone could protest the moderator's abrupt words, the paper they all desperately wrote on vanished. That's the end of the first phase of the exams. I hope you were all able to answer the questions properly. He said cheerfully. Though he appeared happy, many of the examinees weren't. Looking around, I could see many uneasy faces full of tension. It's none of my business, I sighed. The fact that I was able to complete my task without any issue remained my primary concern. The only thing I had to worry about was the next phase of the exam. I won't be the one handling the next aspect of your exam. As such, I shall be taking my leave after introducing him to you all. Suddenly a gust of wind began gathering in the arena, drawing the attention of everyone, even the distraught students, to the vast stage before them. Taking charge of the second round is none other than one of the senior lecturers within Ainslark Academy.
Professor.
My eyes bulged as I caught the sight of the man who appeared from within the tendrils of wind on the stage. He was one other than Legris Damien. The thousands of students all burst out in surprise as they all had similar expressions of shock at the sight of their second examiner. Nice to meet you all. Professor Legris Damien greeted, smiling at everyone with his usual cheerful grin. I was at a loss for words, yet I couldn't help but let out a slight grin myself. I knew he was no ordinary man, but to think he was a senior lecturer. That was shocking beyond belief. I suppose it's more accurate to say it's good to see you all again. After all, you have all met me at least once. He added. The aspiring students now grew more uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. It was clear from their reactions that most of them had treated him with disrespect during their encounter. Phew, this is why one should be careful of their conduct. I thought to myself in relief. Now then, without wasting much of our time, it's time to begin the second round of the test. The requirements are quite simple, really. Legris Damien said, looking at the moderator beside him, and gave a slight nod. The moderator nodded back, saying goodbye to everyone present. With a snap of his fingers, he vanished from our sights, leaving only Legris Damien in our presence. The purpose for this second round, as most of you already know, is magic casting. As students of Ainslark, it's important that you're capable of utilizing mana, and at your age, a certain degree of skill is expected of you. He explained. Everyone was absolutely silent, realizing they were in the presence of one of the most distinguished figures in the entire academy. You will each step forward for a demonstration and launch your most powerful or effective spells at me. I shall judge your abilities based on the academy's criteria. I certainly hope you do not disappoint me. And so, taking advantage of the wave of unease affecting the voice of the students, Legris raised his hand slightly and a long scroll appeared in his grasp. The scroll stretched for quite a distance, indicating whatever was written there was quite long. These are the names of everyone present here. I will be calling you one after the other, so make sure you come quickly once your names are called. Since we do not have much time, you only have 3 minutes each to show me your worth. Many people's eyes bulged. 3 minutes was far too short for them to display their full capabilities. However, in the presence of such an awesome figure, who could complain? Even though the environment was tense, I had no idea why my heart was palpitating at such a rapid rate. It wasn't anxiety but excitement. Somehow, I was looking forward to my turn. I can't wait to show that guy what I'm capable of.
I grinned.
Still, something bothered me. Calculating the time allocated was 3 minutes, we were 4,000 in the hall. No matter how one looked at it, there was no way we would be done by the end of today even if we didn't completely use up 3 minutes. What's his play? However, just as I was making my thought, I felt Legris' gaze shift to me. It was only for a moment, but our eyes met and he smiled at me. I returned his gesture, feeling a little intimidated by his strange action. It was almost like he could read my mind. For those wondering if there will be enough time to test you all, you do not need to worry. Time is all we have bountifully here, he declared, addressing everyone. His voice caused some people to make peculiar faces, as though not realizing that time was not going to be enough in the first place. As they struggled to calculate, everyone began to realize that we were too many to grade in a single day. This hall is enchanted with a special kind of magic. Time in here is considerably slowed down. So, you do not need to worry. You should be able to conclude the entire exams before the sun sets.
F for real. I beamed.
That meant they finally found a way to implement time magic as a conceptual factor. This was groundbreaking. Entirely surreal. I initially didn't believe it, thinking it was another farce.
However,
as unbelievable as it sounded, there was no reason for a distinguished senior lecturer to lie. It was true, time was slowed down here. While I didn't know the ratio, it was still an amazing feeling nonetheless. Now then, let us begin. Legris Damien called us back into the realm of reality.
The first is Dash.
The first is Maria Helmsworth.
Step out, please.
Legris Damien stated. I could see the eyes of everyone bulge in shock. Their faces moved in strange ways, making me wonder if everyone knew the person Legris was referring to. Their widened eyes were all focused on a girl who stood among the countless others seated. Not only were their eyes on her, watching every move she made, but the lips of people also began moving and I could hear those close to me make hushed statements.
Hey, that's her, isn't it?
She's the real deal. To think they would call someone like her first.
Shit.
If she goes first, no matter what I do, it'll be seen as trash. HMMN, sounds like we have us a genius here. I reasoned, deducing that much from all I heard. My eyes narrowed as I focused on the young girl who was already moving close to our examiner. Since she backed me, all I could see was her long flowing silver hair. Her frame was slender and tall. Her outfit was one befitting of the child of high nobility, and I could sense an air of elegance from every step she took. She had to be from a duke's family at the very least. With the way everyone talked about her, and the confident stride she possessed, this Maria Helmsworth girl had already entrapped my interest. I was curious about what she had. Now then, as already stated in the instructions, show me your most impressive feat. Legris Damien said. His voice wasn't loud since he was only addressing the young lady, but through the use of enhancement magic, I was able to improve my hearing and sight to a considerable degree. I can read their lips and listen in to their conversation. Now turning sideways, a distance from Legris, I caught a glimpse of her face. It was extremely beautiful. No, if there was a word that transcended that, then it would better fit the woman I laid eyes on. Her gleaming blue eyes accentuated the clear hair she possessed. She had a place complexion with very smooth skin, nearly like a frozen sculpture of beauty. I quickly shook my head, bringing myself out of the trance that I appeared to be stuck in. While she was a beauty and a rumored genius, in the end, it mattered not to me. What was more of a concern would be the magic she could display. Since the time is short, I won't be able to show you my best spell. I'll compensate with one that can fit into the limit set. Is that fine? She asked, her voice silky smooth, yet having a serious tone of purpose.
Of course.
Your time starts now. Legris Damien remarked. The moment he said this, the girl closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her lips began moving rapidly, indicating she had commenced casting the spell. Judging by the speed of her lips, they weren't normal.
She was too fast.
She's using enhancement magic to quicken the speed of her chanting. That's impressive.
I smiled.
Mana began surging from within Maria, and wind began swirling around the area where she stood. White light enveloped her and the winds became even fiercer, twisting and turning. The crowd could feel the pressure from where they sat, watching the magnificence of her spell. Before long, the wind had already become a whirlwind of considerable mass. It was nearly 10 foot, with a huge mass that encircled Maria entirely. Sylph's whisper,
she declared.
The whirlwind increased in tempo and twisted faster. Suddenly, she pushed her hands forward, sending the twister to Legris' location. The wind instantly moved from her surroundings and lunged at our examiner.
Whoosh!
The powerful tornado neared Legris at a frightening pace, but he maintained his ground, not flinching for a second. As soon as it got into close proximity to him, the vast cluster of twisting wind instantly scattered, nullified within a moment. The scattered wind rushed at everyone in the audience, causing us to slightly shiver due to the chilly wind. Maria Helmsworth looked surprised by the ease with which Legris dispelled her spell, but quickly got over it. Of course, I was smiling the whole time. It was a foregone conclusion that none of us present could create any spell to actually harm our examiner.
Maria Helmsworth.
The second phase of your exam has been concluded. You may leave this hall and head to the door straight to your right. You will undergo the third part of your exam there. Legris said, pointing to a hallway far to his left and her right. Sure enough, such a hallway didn't exist before. However, within an arena with a time-slowing effect, a hidden passage appearing suddenly was no surprise. Maria nodded slightly, not speaking another word as she departed to the hallway. While many may not have noticed, I saw her fists clench tightly, most likely due to dissatisfaction on her part. Did she expect her power to have a better effect on Legris? How childish. I smiled, watching her disappear into the hallway. Her spell, Sylph's Whisper, was a basic one. Of course, it belonged to the highest class of basic spells, and judging by her use of it, she had reached the point of near mastery over it. However, compared to that, her adversary was a senior lecturer. Judging from the impression I had of him, it was certain that the man could use advanced magic as well. She stood no chance to begin with. Next up, we have Matthias Desmeyer. Legris Damien declared, reading from the long scroll he had in his hands. And so, another candidate appeared. His appearance wasn't too shabby, and no real attention was placed on him. This meant his skills were either mediocre or underrated. Apparently, it was the former. Perhaps it was due to the performance given by Maria Helmsworth, but I found his spell too lacking. Still, to my surprise, Legris didn't make any expression of disappointment. He maintained his poker face and repeated what he told Maria.
Matthias Desmeyer.
The second phase of your exam has been concluded. You may leave this hall and head to the door straight to your right. You will undergo the third part of your exam there. Since the audience didn't look disappointed as well, I chalked it up to my high standards and reasoned that the boy probably also passed. Returning to the list he had, Legris began calling names again. Next we have. Legris kept calling examinees one after the other, allocating exactly 3 minutes for each to display their worth. For those who risked it and went for spells that were very effective but took too long to cast, Legris stopped them midway. Surprisingly, he told none of the examinees that they had failed. He simply repeated what he had told everyone else and directed them to the hallway where they would be taking the third section of their exams. I guess it doesn't matter if they fail or not. The third phase will still be attempted by everyone, I reasoned. In the first place, not everyone was bound to pass the first stage, yet we were all included in the current second phase. It was most likely that our scores would be culminated and our final results from the overall achievements we made in all stages. And so, time passed even though it was slowed down. I began to grow bored of the pathetic displays I witnessed one after the other. Other than Maria and one other kid called Stefan, I saw no one really worthy of note. It was a shame that I couldn't find anything entertaining, but patience was a virtue one learned as they grew older, so I had lots of it. Instead of focusing on others, there was a matter of utmost pertinence that I had neglected since the second round began. What spell should I use? Once again, as though reading my mind or just messing with me, Legris Damien looked in my direction and smiled.
Up next,
Jared Leonard. My eyes bulged as I was welcomed to the center of the arena. I stood from where I sat and made my way to the center of the arena, feeling the intense gazes of everyone around. Surprisingly, they engaged in side talks and whispered about me. What's this? Could it be that I'm actually famous around these parts? My mind rang, inclining my ears to listen to their hushed words.
Leonard?
As in the Duke family Leonard. They haven't produced a magic user in so long, and you're telling me someone from their household is here? Pfft. They must truly be desperate. I wonder what method they had to resort to for their child to be here. He doesn't seem strong. Do you think he'll be impressive at all? Even if they miraculously produced a magic user, there's no way he'll be as high-end as the other families who have distinguished mages in their households. It'll be a miracle if he could even produce an average spell. Hearing their scathing comments put a nasty taste in my mouth, causing me to scowl a little. While I usually wouldn't pay any mind to weaklings, the fact that their words affected the image of my family, no matter how small, was a little unpleasant. "We meet again, Mr. Jared Leonard." Legris smiled as I appeared before him. Seeing his face made me temporarily forget the foolish ramblings of the seated fools. I didn't know why, but I felt an aura of ease around this examiner.
Who would have thought,
Should I say it's a pleasure we get to meet again under these circumstances? I asked with a grin. Legris shrugged.
Maybe. Maybe not.
Let's halt the small talk for now. Show me what you've got. Even though he tried to act disinterested, I could sense it in his eyes. This man was absolutely curious about what I would show him. The scroll he held in his hand vanished, and he placed both hands in his pocket, looking at me with an air of confidence surrounding him. "Are you supposed to be so relaxed in front of someone who's about to shoot magic at you?"
I asked. He shrugged once again.
"It doesn't matter. Your spell won't have any effect on me, so don't worry.
Now, you may begin.
Your time starts now." Even though the clock was ticking for my spell, I didn't make any motion for movement. A smile formed on my face as I slightly shook my head. "You have it all wrong, Senior. I don't think you'll be able to take my spell so casually. At the very least, you'll lift two of those hands to stop it." Legris appeared a little stunned as I said this. This only lasted for a moment though, as he burst into laughter soon afterward. "You're pretty amusing, you know? But even though you seem to possess sharp wits, more than anyone your age, you're merely a white core grade. What could you possibly hope to achieve in such a limited time that would cause me to take you a little seriously?" His eyes narrowed at me with suspense, still stunned that I hadn't even begun casting yet. "Your time is passing, you know."
I know.
I snapped back at his reminder. The audience stared at me impatiently, wondering what was going on. Judging from their reactions, none of them had the capability of using a simple spell for hearing enhancement in order to listen to my conversation with our examiner. "Hey, what's going on down there? Did the Leonard brat give up already? He hasn't even started doing anything, and nearly a minute has elapsed." "Welp, what did you expect from him? Maybe some could have used magic to heighten their senses to pick up on my little exchange with the examiner, but didn't think of it. How disappointing." My thoughts trailed. After a minute elapsed, I gave a short sigh, now stretching my body a little. "Looks like your grace period is over."
I smiled.
My statement appeared to surprise Legris a little. "Grace period?"
He asked. "Yeah."
"To take this exchange seriously, but it appears you won't. Well then, don't fault me for what happens next." Feeling up the 3 mana cores within my body, I smiled, releasing the mana reserves within them through my pores. After practicing for some time, I had gotten quite the hang of it. My level of mastery was to the point that no one would be able to distinguish it from a normal spell.
Spellcraft.
After considering all the criteria for admission into Ainslark Academy, I had already deduced that there was no need to worry about it. However, with the introduction of the third portion of our exams, that assurance vanished. If my guess was correct and our final score would be based on a culmination of the 3 areas, I needed to do extremely well in the first 2. I didn't intend to go this far initially, but I won't be holding back for this exam, at least not too much.
My thoughts trailed.
To achieve the most efficient result, I had to resort to spellcraft. Releasing the mana from my 3 mana cores, I resonated them with the environment. Fortunately, our very surrounding was rich in mana since hundreds of people had already used their spells before I entered the stage. Plus, the hall itself operated on magic. That meant I had a nearly limitless pool to draw from. Synchronizing my mana with the mana present around me, I created different reactions for 3 of my spells. I have the spell and formula in my head, I just don't have enough mana and speed due to my mana core grade. That meant the only thing limiting me, as well as most magic users, was my mana core. However, using spellcraft, that limitation was as good as gone. Sylph's Whisper.
Ifrit's Breath.
Heavenly Spark. I chanted simultaneously. 3 basic spells at the same time, all at the highest caliber. The wind hurricane that Maria had used during her round appeared in a flash. Mine was even more powerful, as all my spectators felt the breeze blow across their seats. Such was the power of my Sylph's Whisper. Ifrit's Breath was a fire spell that boasted the most destructive capacity of all basic fire spells. It took on the shape of a large ball floating high above my head. The heat was enough to send everyone sweating. The strong wind blew the heat across the entire hall, causing the uncomfortable heat to spread more rapidly. Finally, Heavenly Spark was a basic lightning spell, and like other spells I cast, boasted the highest destructive capacity out of all the spells in its class. Appearing with a roar above the examiner, my lightning stood still, waiting for the completion of my spell, which would cause it to immediately descend. With the three of the most powerful spells most people in the room hoped to achieve at my beck and call, the reactions of the examinees changed in an instant.
What? That is.
Impossible. How is he doing that? He's using 3 different elements at the same time? The spells themselves are top class. And he's using 3 at the same time. That's impossible. Of course, this much was expected of silly kids who were extremely astonished by Maria's display earlier. However, it was not their reactions I was looking forward to. Amazing. I always knew you weren't normal. But this, he muttered, looking at what I had conjured up for him. The surprise clearly written on his face and the unexplainable display of awe in his eyes gave me pleasure. A wide grin formed on my face as I replied to him. Oh, please don't be surprised now, Examiner Sir Legris Damien. I'm just getting started. His eyes widened more in surprise as he couldn't fathom what more I could show him other than this. Sure, with this alone I was guaranteed a passing grade higher than any that had come before me and most likely after me.
However,
this isn't enough, my mind rang. While it was impressive, 3 respective basic spells were still nothing in face of someone at Legris level. I wanted him to truly regret his decision of treating me casually.
plus,
It would be a waste to settle for this anyway. Once again focusing my mana that formed an integral part of the 3 spells, I sent more power into them, and slowly, connected the 3 spells through a mana channel. While invisible to the natural eyes, anyone using mana to trace the particles would be able to see it clearly. Just like strings tying various objects, my mana tied the 3 spells from their respective locations. Let us begin. FWSSSHHHHH. I sent the roaring whirlwind toward Legris, at the same time pulling Igris Breath S flames to the spinning cluster of wind. Since both of them had been tied together and contained my resonating mana, both spells merged most fluidly. The transparent wind took in the bright orange-red flames and instantly turned into an intense whirlwind of flames. This instantly caused everyone around to scream in pain and fright, feeling the tingles on their skin. The fiery whirlwind increased in speed and neared Legris, quickly creating burn marks on the ground in its advance. Legris grinned excitedly as he watched the joint spell approach him. I could hardly see him due to wind pressure and the distortion caused by the heat, but Legris was certainly smiling widely, having bulged eyes.
I'm not done,
I declared, controlling the lightning that was dormant above him. Kruruwaik. It crackled, drawing Legris' attention to the spell over his head.
fall.
The lightning instantly descended, swiftly making its way to the ground toward its target. Legris took this as his cue and finally removed one of his hands from his pockets and raised it to stop the spell.
Wrong move.
My mind rang. Instantly pulling the lightning using the mana thread woven about it, I changed its trajectory, causing it to mix with the fiery whirlwind.
KRRRRRI.
Cake, DVWMMM. Crackles and flashes of lightning from Heavenly Spark, roaring flames of Ifrit's Breath, merged with the roaring winds of Sylph's Whisper, all woven together sped across the platform and charged at the examiner with an unexpected new speed. Before he would descend his hand, the spell would hit. The look on his face confirmed it. He looked absolutely stunned beyond belief. However, I saw that he still had no intention of raising his second hand. Instead, he focused on the new spell, attempting to stop it with the force of his mana alone.
Don't even think about it.
Don't even think about it. I grinned, activating the special trick I had prepared beforehand at that very moment.
Zoop-up.
The ground melted, shifted, and quaked all at the same time. The sudden movement of the stage caused great astonishment for everyone, especially the target. This offset Legris stance, entirely ruining his focus. His body wobbled as he fell. Nearing the ground as a result of the imbalance of the earth, he quickly pulled himself together and regained his posture, but by the time he achieved this, the terrible mix of 3 basic spells, now at the intermediate stage, was already before him. In less than a second, it would hit. What are you going to do now, Sir Legris? My mind rang. That very instant, in the blink of an eye, just as I expected, Legris used his second hand to counter the destructive whirlwind before him. He released a mana wave of superior quality, nullifying the spell. It was most likely a powerful mana disturbance spell, since anti-magic didn't exist. FWSHHHH. In an instant, my spell slowed down and dissipated after a couple of seconds. Though he succeeded in stopping my spell, as he did with the others before mine, it was clear which one gave him the most trouble.
Good grief, this kid.
Just what are you? Legris Damien grinned, looking at me with greater interest. I shrugged, asking him how long I had spent on my exam. Well, let's see, he muttered, not sure himself, since he was caught up with the excitement that he forgot to count. However, an exam as important as this was bound to have a timer, so by using a spell, he revealed a giant ticking clock that floated midair. It was large enough for everyone to see, so we all raised our heads to see what it said. This is, he muttered in surprise. Everyone in the room had the very same expression.
Absolute astonishment.
2 minutes, 5 seconds, that's amazing. Legris remarked, looking at me with amazement. However, my expression instantly dissuaded him from flattering me with his words. That was because the elapsed time was a disappointment to me. I wanted to be done in exactly 2 minutes. It appears I need more practice, I muttered to myself. There was a need to analyze the combination from scratch and figure out a loophole that I could exploit to quicken the effective use of the spell. I'd say this is plenty impressive, Jared. You cast intermediate magic at such a young age. Legris interrupted my thoughts. He must have sensed my dissatisfaction with the results and attempted to smoothen things. His efforts were in vain, though, since I was never going to settle for less. I just cast 3 basic spells and merged them to give that result. It can't be qualified as intermediate magic per SE. I responded. Legris wanted to argue with my logic, but this wasn't the appropriate place to further discuss such matters since we had a massive audience watching. Did you see that? This is crazy, no, impossible. How can this, is he really an entrant? Many speculations coupled with loud murmurs echoed across the hall as the student who once looked down on me began to stare in amazement and awe. Of course, I couldn't avoid the suspicious gazes of some who simply couldn't accept the results and thought I had used some form of trick to cheat. Those who thought along that line were bound to be brain-dead since everyone had already been informed about the strict monitoring of our exams. Besides, no mere trick would be enough to trick someone of Legris caliber. In the end, it's just plain envy, eh? I reasoned. Legris Damien saw how rowdy the hall had gotten due to my spectacular display and quickly took action to restore order.
Ahem.
As soon as Legris cleared his throat, everyone fell silent, hearing the sound reverberate across the hall. No one dared to speak the moment a senior lecturer like our examiner signaled the end of the murmurs. Now turning to look at me, Legris smiled and told me what he had said to the others who had their turn before mine. Jared Leonard. The second phase of your exam has been concluded. You may leave this hall and head to the door straight to your right. You will undergo the third part of your exam there. I nodded, bowing slightly as I left for the door that awaited me exactly as Jared declared. As I moved away from the stage, I turned back to grin at Legris. I told you, didn't I? That you couldn't handle it casually. Looks like I was right. Legris shrugged, still giving me an amused look. He wanted to respond, but he held back for some reason. Still, it may have been petty, but I felt good impressing someone of his caliber and rubbing it in his face. When next we meet, I promise to show you something more interesting. Upon saying this, I left for the door. Legris remained silent, which was a pity. I was hoping for a cool comeback. Opening the door that led to what appeared to be a long hallway, I began making my way into it. Suddenly, I felt a sharp sensation reverberate within my head. It felt as though a strange sensation was invading my inner senses, but I couldn't do anything to stop it. I'll be looking forward to it then. Legris' voice sounded in my head. My eyes bulged instantly. He used mind magic to communicate telepathically with me, an impressive feat. I didn't know if what he established was a one-way channel, or whether I could respond to his message, but I still have my response within my thoughts.
Good. Till we next meet.
Grinning widely in anticipation and excitement, I made my way down the hallway, shutting the door behind me. In his entire life as a magic user, this was a first for Legris. For him to be so flustered as to play directly into the hands of a child. It was so embarrassing, yet refreshing. He was able to cast 3 different spells of varying elements at the same time.
No, 4 elements.
He used that earth spell at the last minute to offset my balance. Legris thought to himself. Jared's quick casting, effective use of his spells, and fluid combination of multiple spells to form a different yet more powerful result were outstanding. The boy was exceptional in every way, which amused the examiner even more. Unfortunately, Jared was about to meet his final challenge, which would prove difficult for even him. While he had conflicting thoughts concerning the matter, there was nothing Legris could do concerning the examining process. A question of utmost puzzlement rang in his head as he called the next entrant for testing. Why does that kid have a white core grade? The passage I passed through was meant to be dark, but the glowing stones affixed to the ceiling made it very bright. As I walked in absolute silence, only hearing the clacking of my heels while moving in the empty space, I mulled over what I would do in the last stage of the exams. I had passed the first two flawlessly, no, exceptionally. However, this last part would prove difficult. The existence of my 2 extra mana cores wouldn't be an issue, since the only detection method available even with modern magic was limited to the primary mana core, which was situated in the stomach region. The other 2, located in my brain and the base of my neck respectively, would not be noticed in the slightest. The problem, however, was that a white mana core, especially one as pure as the one I possessed, meant the magic user was weak and untalented since they couldn't use higher levels of magic.
TSK. I clicked my tongue in annoyance.
No matter what I thought of, none of them would be effective in the coming test. Realizing there was nothing I could do about it, I decided to let the thought go and simply participate in the test. Hopefully, my other results help. I could finally see an opening at the end of the deep tunnel after moving for about a minute. The next aspiring student must have begun his spell by now. Did that mean I would be done with the 3rd stage before he would walk down this passage? There was no way to find out. Let's do this. My mind rang. At the end of the hallway was another door, similar to the one I used to enter from the start. I opened the door and got myself into a white room. It was tiled all around and had a glimmering brightness that made me cringe my eyes. Welcome, examinee 458. Please come closer. A voice broke through my stunned state. I slowly opened my eyes, getting used to the sudden brightness after traversing the hallway. Taking in the sight around me mowed steadily, I was finally able to see everything surrounding me. It was really an empty white space, save for 2 other things present apart from myself. A woman clad in white stood beside a massive black orb. The large ball was nearly as tall as the woman and had a glimmering dark shade to it. Okay, I replied, my voice trailing as I drew closer to her. Upon closer inspection, I analyzed the woman better. She donned a white lab coat and had glasses hinged evenly on her face. Her long dark hair flowed to the back of her neck, and the stern expression she gave indicated she was in no mood for any dilly-dallying. Now before her and adjacent to the black orb, I gulped, locking eyes with her jet black ones. Stand before the orb and place one of your hands on it, she said, holding a book and pen in both hands, most likely to record the results my test would bring. I nodded and obediently went to the orb. Taking a short breath, I placed my right hand on the black orb and suddenly it started reacting to my touch. Feeling my whole body twitching as the mana flow within me throbbed, my stomach especially felt hot and the mana in the core within me swirled. Shi Yining. A sharp glow of white light spread across the dark orb and it transformed from its original state, taking on the color of my core.
Oh?
A pure white mana core at this age? This is the first I've seen, the woman muttered, writing some things in her book. Her words made me embarrassed. Even though I knew my decision not to advance my core grade was the correct one, having someone like her give a condescending remark about it was nothing short of mortifying. Welp, it's not like I can lecture her on the importance of a pure core. I reasoned. You can remove your hand now. The 3rd stage of your exams is over. The woman said, not bothering to give a second glance at me.
You may leave.
Her fingers pointed to a door at the far end of the room, opposite where I came out from. She still refused to look at me, most likely due to her disgust for my lack of talent. However, I wasn't done with her.
Excuse me.
I have a question. The woman raised her head from the book she held and stared at me blankly. What is it? Could you tell me more about how this 3rd test works? Both the 1st and 2nd stage examiners explained the criterion for the test, you told me nothing. I smiled, giving her a very endearing look. However, I was sure she could sense that beneath my sweet smile was an air of attitude caused by the displeasure I had with her reaction toward me.
TCH, cheeky brat.
She whispered under her breath. I ignored the woman's statement and awaited her explanation. This orb is called the core grade detector. As its name implies, it measures your core grade and exactly displays an image on its surface. She began after sighing at the pointlessness of exerting energy in explaining something like this to me. This test is meant to reveal the state in which your core grade is. Usually, potential students possess a large quality of the yellow color already dwelling in their mana core, while a few others have complete yellow mana cores.
Ah.
I see, I muttered, looking at the orb for the 2nd time. The white color it donned began fading away as it regained its black look. It most likely reverts to its original form after some time. I looked back at the examiner, but she had a peculiar expression, engaged in a thought of her own. Her face looked hesitant for a moment as she made a passing comment. Though, there are rare cases of people showing up with a higher core grade, like that girl. Who would have thought she had gone as far as a blue core grade? Of course, she whispered that last part. Fortunately, my hearing was very good and I picked up what she said. My eyes bulged slightly when I heard it. To think someone at the level of examinee would achieve a blue mana core grade. It was a truly remarkable achievement indeed. Could it be? She said it was a girl. Then that means, my thoughts trailed. It had to be Maria Helmsworth. She seemed to be the only impressive person who had finished the second stage before me. To think she was this much of a genius.
I see.
Thank you for informing me. I smiled and bowed slightly. Turning to the exit, I walked gracefully to leave the white room. The woman's gaze returned to her book, not bothering to give me a second glance. I could sense the presence of the next examinee close to the room. It appeared over 3 minutes has passed already. Opening the door in a hurry to leave, I was met with another hallway. What was with these people and hallways? Also, how large was this hall anyway? As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I felt a strange sensation course through my body. I didn't recognize it at first, but as I followed the cleanly carved and brightly lit path, I realized the reason for my strange sensations. Time. The time magic isn't as effective here. I could feel the effectiveness of the spell reduced drastically. A smile formed on my face, realizing where I was headed. This hallway was quite short, compared to the other one, and within a few seconds, I was out of it, arriving at an open space.
Oh?
A short air of awe escaped from my lips. My eyes picked up all the glittering lights and the exquisitely designed place. The hallway connected to the rear of an extremely large hall. It was nearly as huge as the symposium. With several thousand chairs arranged in rows and columns, I met a couple hundred people already seated and waiting impatiently. So, this is the waiting area, I whispered, taking a step forward. My eyes darted to the most convenient place to sit, and I eyed a good position on the far end to the left. It appeared not many people were there, save for a boy and girl. The rest were a considerable distance from the pair and were all engaged in discussions. It was another reason why I decided it was best to pick the conveniently free space. It'll be bothersome to engage in conversation at this point, I reasoned. Most of the examinees prattled on the kind of spell they used, their fears of being rejected, the kind of mana core grade they had, etc. I found such talks boorish and irrelevant. I could have chosen to pick one of the seats at the rear, where no student had filled yet, but that would just paint me out to be a weirdo. I needed to blend in, but avoid any conversation that would needlessly wear me out. Looking at the many empty seats to the left uninhabited by many, except 2, I made up my mind. I should go there after all. Gliding through the rows and columns, I made my way to the spot and sat on one of the empty seats, making sure I was a few chairs apart from the other 2. That way, we wouldn't need to engage in any form of fruitless discussion. Fortunately, the both of them appeared to be silent, so I doubted they would even bother to. Dash? My mind rang as I took a closer inspection at the 2 people I was seated beside. One of them was Maria Helmsworth. I hadn't seen her face clearly before seating since my mind was more occupied with so many things, but to think I made such a grave error. I suddenly realized why many chose not to sit there. They gave the prodigy her space, and by now, though it was too late, I could sense the numerous gazes of the students converging on the girl. Shit. Why did I choose to sit here? Now, I felt even more uncomfortable than before. In any case, I just had to wait things out and make sure I remained inconspicuous. That will prove difficult though, my mind trailed. I could already feel them, the gazes of many piercing my small frame. I felt like their glares would consume me. So many bit their lips in jealousy and made whispers, wondering what I was doing under the genius girl's radar. All I wanted was a short moment of silence, yet it appeared even that dream would be shattered. Creak. I heard a chair rattle from someone rising from it. My eyes darted to the source and saw the boy who sat beside Maria leave his own seat by her side and draw nearer to me. Oh damn, I heaved in anxiety. I had selected this seat because I wanted to avoid a conversation, yet he was drawing closer to me with his gaze directly fixed on my seat. What does this guy want? Hey. The strange boy flatly addressed me. I had intentionally avoided his gaze, but that was difficult to do now that he was standing directly in front of me. Everyone's eyes had shifted from Maria and were now locked on us, I could feel it. The most convenient option for me would be to ignore him and pretend I didn't hear in hopes that he would take the hint and scram. However, that would be rude, and if I did that with the attention of everyone so fixated on us, it would create a terrible impression on not just me but my family. As someone who learned etiquette to the highest degree attainable for my age, I couldn't smear my family's name. Plus, I intend on making friends in this place eventually. It wouldn't be good if I give a bad first impression and come off as snobbish. Hey! I finally responded after a grueling series of internal interrogations. I lifted my eyes to view the boy who addressed me and locked eyes with him. He had a gentle smile plastered on his face, but the lad couldn't fool my eyes. For some reason, the boy was hiding a deep glare underneath his nice demeanor. Could I ask for your name? He asked. I was now a little skeptical about telling him my identity, especially since it seemed like he had malicious intentions. However, I had already come this far anyway. I am Jared Leonard. My flat statement seemed to provoke a surprised reaction from him and even those around me. From the Duke household of Leonard Alphonse Sereth? He calmly replied. I responded positively. His eyes seemed to ogle my body as if sizing me up. A wider grin appeared on his face, morphing the nice expression on his face into that of a condescending look of disgust. I see, a voice leaked out of his curled lips. Feeling the air around us change, I decided to quickly change the topic. What about yours? The boy seemed a little flustered that I was asking such an obvious question. I felt more piercing gazes and heard gasps emanating from the rest of the students. What's going on? Am I supposed to know this guy? My thoughts trailed. Oh? I see. It's understandable that someone like you may not know who I am. The boy said with a mocking gaze. My name is Stefan, from the glorious house of Netherlore Zenith. My eyes widened slightly as my memory picked up an image. Slowly, I came to remember his identity. During the exams, he was the only other student that performed adequately well apart from Maria. I wasn't really focused on his appearance since he didn't have any striking features other than the fact that he was handsome. To think he was the one who spoke to me. The fact that the kid was seated beside Maria proved that he was also considered a magic prodigy. After all, no one gave him scathing glares for choosing where he sat. It seems I have jugged your memory. He smiled, drawing closer to me. I eased my back on my seat to create even more distance between us, but it was no use since he moved even nearer. I'll make this nice and simple, so listen well, he whispered, intentionally reducing the volume of his tone so only I could clearly hear him. What was he going to say? I had a fair idea. I'm going to need you to leave this place immediately. You're making me and Maria over there uncomfortable. You understand, don't you? Just as I thought. He was playing this card. I already assumed that everyone avoided seating anywhere around them due to respect and awe. However, it was also because of fear. They didn't want to cross the most powerful geniuses in the room. This guy, is he really threatening me right now? It was laughable to the point that I leaked a chuckle, despite trying my hardest to contain my amusement. Stefan, as his name was, drew away from me as soon as he saw me chuckle and gave me a deep glare. Apparently, I had just insulted him. I am being polite right now. Leave, and there will be no issue. He narrowed his eyes at me. Pfft. Is that supposed to be scary? For me, it was no more than a child's tantrum. He couldn't be any older than I was, yet the air he commanded made him think of himself as superior. I turned my head to my right, seeing the girl that sat a couple of seats away from me. Her striking beauty was still something that impressed me. Turning back to Stefan, I asked a simple question. You say I am disturbing the both of you, correct? Yes. His glare deepened as he answered. I smiled and nodded, rising from my seat. The little brat appeared pleased by my actions, not suspecting my next move. Swiftly gliding past him, I moved to my right and approached the goddess. Everyone seemed to fawn over Maria. Stefan's eyes bulged, surprised by my audacity. However, before he could come over to me and give his reaction, I leaned closer to the girl and asked her a very simple question. Our faces were close, and I could see the clear sparkles in her eyes. They seemed slightly bigger than usual, perhaps because she was also surprised by my effrontery. I ignored the flustered reaction she gave, Stefan's increasing rage, and the angry stares all around me. Am I disturbing you? My voice reverberated across the vast space surrounding us, and the question rang ever so deeply in everyone's head. It was the ultimate insult to the one who proposed that notion in the first place, and he was already beside me, ready to give me a fist to my face. Childish. I dodged Stefan's jab and grabbed the arm he flung at me. Swiftly twisting it with absolute precision, I rattled his joints, causing him to yelp in pain. Arg! Arg! Stefan yelled, taking a few steps back in recoil. His eyes winced in pain as he grabbed his throbbing arm, which I released as soon as he screamed. Don't overreact. I made sure I was gentle. Your arm is fine. I said calmly to the boy who writhed due to the throbbing sensations coming from his bones. You bastard, how dare you dash? My, won't you mind your language, Sir Stefan Netherlore Zenith? I accentuated my tone, giving a deeper meaning to my words. For a noble to speak so vulgarly, surely it was frowned upon by many. Stefan became flustered by my words and gritted his teeth in annoyance. However, now the boy knew he couldn't make any careless move against me. Turning back to the seated girl who silently watched our little exchange, I repeated my question. Am I disturbing you? Her lips were tightly shut and her eyes affixed on my gaze, but I had no intention of backing down. I kept drawing my face nearer until she was willing to answer my question. She made no attempt to stop me even when our faces were merely inches apart. Her eyes depicted curiosity and wonder. The true expression of a child who was witnessing something amazing for the first time. It was innocent and pure, but I also had what I wanted from the girl.
An answer.
And no, Maria finally said, looking away from me. Her voice, though mere whispers, were enhanced by the amplification spell I had activated beforehand. This caused everyone in the room to hear her response. Gasps emanated from everyone the moment the prodigy's answer reverberated across the area, realizing the implication of her words. Maria herself was surprised by the volume of her melodious voice, looking at me with suspicion. A smile of victory formed on my face as I ignored the stare she gave and looked in Stefan's direction. He too had heard Maria's response. Apparently, this young lady doesn't think I'm disturbing her. I grinned, moving closer to Stefan. Why you? He growled. Walking past him in an elegant stride, I returned to my seat and made myself comfortable. The audience was beyond amazed by my audacity, but as the mobs they were, none of them made any comment other than whispers and gasping sounds. You'll regret this, Jared Leonard. I can promise you that. Stefan said in a low, threatening tone. If I was a normal child, perhaps I would have been a little scared and begged for forgiveness. After all, it profited nothing to have an enemy within the academy. However, if I was like that, I wouldn't have begun this venture in the first place. A part of me was excited to see what the future held for me and Stefan. It would serve as side entertainment for my life in Ainslark. Closing my eyes for a moment, I ignored Stefan's scathing glare and decided to relax my mind. Unfortunately, even that was cut short by yet another interruption. The murmur suddenly took a spike in tempo as more hushed sounds filled the hall. Ugh, what now?
I thought in irritation.
Focusing my senses with enhancement magic, I decided to listen in on their comments.
That's him.
It's Jared Leonard.
Ooh.
I wish I was here when the clash between him and Stefan started.
You saw it too, right?
His performance in the second stage of the exams. Stefan doesn't stand a chance. My body twitched as soon as I heard those talks spread. The people who were instigating and spreading the comments were the ones who witnessed my performance in the arena. Isn't it too soon? I mean, not even 10 minutes have passed since I entered this hall, and yet there are so many people talking about me. My thoughts were interrupted by the recollection of the time normalcy in this waiting room. Since time was accelerated for the exams and flowed normally here, more students would be entering the room in minutes. Ah, I see. Words escaped my lips as I sighed. It made better sense this way, anyway. It would be unreasonable for everyone in the waiting room to wait for several hours for the others to conclude their exams. This way, only a few hours at most would elapse before we got to conclude the exams for the day. Plus, the results will be released today. That's why there's a waiting room in the first place. We just had to wait it out. More importantly, it seemed the ones who were singing my praise began talking to those who glared at me with annoyance for my audacity in seating close to two geniuses. Public opinion slowly changed as soon as people heard what I had performed. Initially, no one believed it, but with more than a few dozen witnesses saying the same thing, it was impossible to dismiss. He's also a genius. No wonder he sat beside those two.
Amazing.
It seems we misjudged him. He must be on par with Sir Stefan and Miss Maria. However, those who saw my grand spell weren't satisfied with merely placing me in the same class as the two prodigies.
Are you kidding?
He's on an entirely different level. I bet he could best them both in magic. That guy is too OP. I sighed in my seat, wondering what these idiots gained from singing my praise. Weren't they the same people who mocked me moments ago? Yet, now they painted me to be a god or something. Welp, their image of me will be shattered once the results are out. After all, since Mana Core grade determined one's status in Ainslark Academy, it was obvious where someone with a pure white core would belong. For people who were so easily swayed by what they saw or heard, it was clear their attitudes would change the moment they discovered my Mana Core grade. These guys are out of it. They're not the kind of comrades I desire.
I reasoned.
I slightly opened my eyes and saw Stefan return to his seat beside Maria, still wearing a scowl on his face. The Maria girl was slightly glancing in my direction, with unwavering curiosity. There was no way the both of them couldn't hear what everyone was saying about me and them, but just like me, they ignored the crowd. While our first impressions of each other weren't the best, if it was those two, especially the Maria girl, I wouldn't mind being friends with them. Let's see how it goes. Just as I expected, we only had to wait for about 2 hours before the hall was full of all the examinees. The door where everyone came from vanished the moment the final student came out of it, stunning everyone. We all sat on our respective seats, though no one neared where I, Maria, and Stefan sat. Since there were plenty of other seats to choose from, they didn't mind taking up other positions. SSSHHHH. A sudden gust of wind enveloped the area in front of all seats, the central podium. The moment everyone felt the string atmosphere building up, they ceased their prattle and directed their faces to the front. The wind swirled around a single spot on the stage for a few seconds, and seeming to materialize from within the small hurricane was a person clad in a luxurious suit. He was different from anyone we had seen previously, which disappointed me a little. I was sort of hoping to see Legris Damien again. Fortunately, I didn't remain disappointed for long. As though popping out of thin air in a puff of smoke, 3 more figures appeared on the podium.
2 men and a woman.
They were stationed behind the first man who appeared and had somehow changed from their varying attire into full suits as well. Our examiners. My mind rang as I beamed, seeing Legris among the people on stage. It was a large hall, but there was no one in the massive room who couldn't see the distinguished people who had arrived. Since the platform was elevated, we all had to raise our heads slightly, but without a doubt, we could all see them. Ahem. The man who appeared first and seemed to be in charge of this session coughed slightly. His voice echoed across the large room, enough so that everyone could hear him clearly. Following the sound of his voice was silence. Absolute silence that seemed to stretch for miles without end. Finally, the very same man who caused the silence broke it by gracing us with his words. My name is Desmond Lawcroft. I am the head of the examination board for this year. In other words, I am the one who determines those who are worthy of this academy for this examination. His voice carried such power and vigor that I wondered just what kind of position this man held other than the head of an examination committee. The man Desmond must have been a general who commanded troops due to the confidence and authority he exhibited with each word he spoke. I welcome you all to Ainslark Academy. However, as you all know, none of you can be admitted into the true academic grounds until you are deemed worthy of passing with satisfactory results. My eyes subtly glanced across the hall as I noticed several of the examinees sweating and gulping. They were already anxious after hearing what he said. Just moments ago, these people were chatting energetically. However, it was now dawning on them that most of them weren't going to even make it to the true academy and be admitted. About 100 alone were going to be chosen from 4,000. That was beyond harsh. How certain am I that even I will? My thoughts trailed, slowly giving in to the disparity of the situation. However, I quickly snapped myself out of the dangerous thoughts I was having. There was no way I could lose after coming this far. Before announcing the results, there are a few things I would like to explain. It could also be useful for those who will not pass this time around, Desmond Lawcroft began. Firstly, Ainslark Academy is a prestigious institute deeply rooted in magic. However, many seem to have the misconception that magic is all there is to this institute. This generated quite the confused expression from people as they stared at one another, trying to decipher the words of the man who spoke. What else would a magic academy be known for? There are 3 major departments within Ainslark Academy. The Magic Arts Department, an obvious existence. There are also the Martial Arts Department and Scholar Departments. I grinned the moment he said this. Of course, I knew this much. Alphonse wanted me to register in Ainslark as a scholar. However, I found that unacceptable since it was the oath I had followed in my previous life. You have all applied for the Magic Art Department, and out of over 5,000 examinees, only 1,350 individuals applied for the other departments. 4,000 of you all chose the Magic Arts Department. No, even more than that number. However, the cap for examination for every department is 4,000, and so the others who applied late had to choose other departments to gain admission rights. As I listened, I could already guess what our dear speaker was trying to tell us. Only 100 of you will be chosen today. The rest will be sent home. Many of you here have attempted this exam more than once, a good number have done this a couple of times, and yet will still fail. At this point, you should all face the harsh truth. Not everyone has what it takes to study and practice magic. His words were harsh and straight to the point, but he was right. It was better for those who kept trying in hopes of one day achieving success to stop while they could. Even if by some miracle they made their way into the academy, the school was another hell on its own where the talentless were left behind and those with superior abilities rose to the top. Instead of unnecessarily trying to reach what was beyond them, their energy could be better used elsewhere. However, do not despair. I am of the firm opinion that no one is born talentless. Everyone has a specialty in one thing or the other. Even if your affinity with magic is low, there are still 2 other departments to enter within Ainslark. We will welcome you to the Martial Arts Department or the Scholar Department, both of which are respectable fields of study. Desmond Lawcroft declared. His words may have been too much for others, but it was easy enough for me to understand. Instead of staying stuck in a game you couldn't win, it was better to switch lanes and achieve greater heights in a race that better suits you. Smart words. Now then, let's see what awaits us as examinees for the Magic Arts Department. Now then, we shall reveal the results of this session of examinations to you all. Desmond Lawcroft declared. We all held our breaths, knowing that a majority of us wouldn't make the cut. No semblance of the confidence I previously had appeared as a silent fear lurked within my guts. Gulp. I have the list of those who passed the exams here with me. But, to make it easier for everyone to understand, I shall display the results for everyone to see. It was amazing that the Academy had already compiled the results so quickly and had determined the winners in the series of tests we passed through. However, when considering the fact that they could use magic to manipulate the flow of time, it was no mystery as to how they arrived at a conclusion so quickly. Silence filled the air as we all awaited the moment of truth, watching Desmond bring forth a scroll from within his luxurious suit. The piece of parchment seemed to have been buried within a pocket within the inner recesses of his jacket, and him bringing it out meant the conclusion of the whole matter was at hand. Of course, none of us could see the contents displayed on the scroll due to our distance. Besides, the list was facing Desmond directly. Since we were all seated opposite him and faced him directly, there was no way we could see anything written on the scroll. How does he intend to reveal the results, then? I asked myself, refusing to take my eyes off the mysterious man for even a second. Desmond's mouth suddenly opened from the tightly shut form they had taken, and he appeared to be mumbling something under his breath. From the way his lips moved, I realized the man was chanting a spell. This lasted for a few seconds, and then, SHINNNNNGGGGG. Light shone suddenly as a wave of energy burst through the room. Everyone felt the rush of energy and was captivated by the sight that was displayed as the pressure subsided. Above the head of Desmond Lawcroft was a large panel that glowed brightly. It was so clear, sharp, and bright that no one could miss it. The panel that took the form of a long list stretched as high as the tall ceiling, revealing its contents. With our eyes all moving to the bright list caused by brilliant clusters of golden light, we marveled. This is light magic, I beamed. He must have used light refraction to display the figures and letters that appeared on the long panel. It was no mean feat, considering the details put in it. Everyone's eyes bulged as they saw the results as well as the meticulous details placed in them. The scores gotten from each round, and the parameters for judging the examinees were also given. Also, only the top 100 who made the cut were displayed on the long panel. Instinctively, my eyes darted to the very top of the list to see who had taken first place. It was no surprise to see who it was.
Maria Helmsworth.
My eyes trailed to my side as I took a short, subtle glance at her. The young girl's eyes were entirely focused on the list and seemed to be scanning through it. She should have seen her name. What is she looking for?
I thought to myself.
Her eyes were determined, though, as though frantically looking for something but not seeming to find any semblance of what she sought. Looking away from Maria before I got even more curious about what could pique her interest other than the fact that she scored the highest, my eyes went back to the list. Reading the contents word for word, I scrutinized the parameters placed therein. Ainslark Student Candidates List.
1 SD Place. Name, Maria Helmsworth. Age, 12 years. First test score, 91.
Second test score, 95.
Third test score, 100.
Total test score, 286.
Mana Core Grade.
Mana Core Grade Concentration, 100%. You have been accepted as a student of Ainslark Academy. It was amazing no matter how many times I thought of it. Was this what it meant to be a genius? Her mana core was blue, and not just that, but it had a total concentration of 100%. Usually, once a magic user advanced their magic core to the next grade, it took a gradual process. So, if a white grade core became yellow, the yellow grade would slowly saturate the core until it became 100% in quality. Only when it became 100% could it be possible for the magic user to completely utilize the full capabilities of their core grade and advance to the next grade. Usually, people her age would still not have achieved 100% concentration in the yellow core grade. She was a genius beyond the normal level. Presently, I had a total of 0 concentration of the yellow core grade and was still a pure white core. It didn't bother me, since that was what I wanted, but even with my knowledge and talent in internal mana manipulation, I doubted it was possible for me to reach her level at my age. So terrifying. My mind rang. I felt my stiff neck refuse to take a turn so I could take another glance at the prodigy. It made sense why everyone was so crazy about her. Quickly shaking off the thoughts about the girl, my eyes went down the list and caught yet another interesting character in second place. Well, it was inevitable, since the two were a pair. If the first was Maria Helmsworth, the second had to be Stefan Netherlore.
2 ND Place. Name, Stefan Netherlore. Age, 12 years. First test score, 97. Second test score, 89. Third test score, 85. Total score, 271. Mana core grade.
Mana core grade concentration, 10%. You have been accepted as a student of Ainslark Academy.
Oh? Not bad.
I suppose his arrogance wasn't for nothing. I smiled with an impressed reaction. It appeared Stefan was more skilled in theory, so he got higher in the first stage of our examination. In fact, I wasn't expecting anyone to score so high, but he surprised me. His other results were equally impressive. Not on the level of the genius girl, but remarkable nonetheless. I turned my face to take a quick glance at him, expecting a snotty and confident look but was met with surprise instead. Stefan donned a stoic and cold look, as though trying to wave off the results displayed before his eyes as no big deal. His eyes displayed a coldness that depicted that the results were to be expected, but I sensed something deeper within them.
Was it frustration?
A little bit of internal anger seemed to swirl within the icy cold shade in his retinas. I see, did he want to get first place? I smiled to myself, finding his conflicting emotion a little funny. Turning back to the screen, I looked at the results of the one who scored third place. It was a little underwhelming, a huge drop from the pedestal raised by the first and second.
3 RD Place. Name, Ivan Smith. Age, 13 years. First test score, 79. Second test score, 64. Third test score, 60. Total score, 203. Mana core grade.
Mana core grade concentration, 85%. You have been accepted as a student of Ainslark Academy. Well, I couldn't complain, since those two were regarded as geniuses. It was only natural that they would be leagues above the rest of them. This Ivan guy must actually be a pretty impressive person, I reasoned. If he had applied in a different year when the first two weren't present, he would have achieved the top spot. It was a shame his accomplishments were overshadowed by prodigies. A smile formed on my face as I looked at the fourth place, having a total of 201 points, not too far off from the third. My eyes trailed down and I noticed the sixth position downward, memorizing their names and scores while skimming through them. They weren't too eye-catching, and their numbers were closely tied. It felt pointless even checking, but I did so anyway. It was a good way to get to know my new classmates. After finally making it to down number 99, and then 100, I completely exhausted the list. A wry smile formed on my face. Of all the names and numbers I carefully analyzed, my name wasn't among any.
Was it an error? Who knew?
I was certain I carefully memorized the name and scores of everyone from the sixth position below after looking at the upper ones. I expected my name to have at least appeared in the lower regions of the list, but there was nothing. My amused, calm smile slowly began fading as my lips twitched. Still, I maintained a calm disposition. It wouldn't do well for me to be so flustered at such a moment. I could hear countless murmurs around me, and the entire hall was in an uproar as many whose dreams were dashed made sobs of anger and frustration. I could easily join them and cry at my failure, but I wasn't so pathetic as to do that. What was going on exactly? Certainly, out of everyone who I scanned, they were all of the yellow core grade, possessing at least 30% concentration. Did I get disqualified because of my pure white core grade? Was it a mistake to refuse to go by the norms and make separate cores instead?
Tisk.
I clicked my tongue in dissatisfaction. This was truly very unpleasant. Why are you looking so glum? A voice suddenly flashed into my mind. My eyes widened as I recalled the sound coming from my mind. The sensation felt so familiar that I couldn't forget it even if I wanted to, and I could recognize the person speaking from anywhere. Darting straight to the platform that stood above the students, My eyes captured the one who just used mind magic on me. Legris Damien. His face had a calm smile written on it, a surprise to me. I had thought he would be disappointed by my failure to gain something as simple as an admission. However, he didn't seem to be fazed. Rather, he was looking at me like I was the strange one. You should check the list again, his voice sounded in my head again.
Again? Why?
I couldn't fathom why he would want MT to engage in such a fruitless venture. Was it to add more salt to my injuries? I didn't make the cut, yet he wanted me to look at the names of those who did? Are you mocking me, Legris? I thought to myself in slight annoyance. However, having nothing better to do, I humored him. My stiff neck rose as I checked the list starting from below. I couldn't turn them anywhere else, afraid to look at those around me. I could feel countless eyes poking me, nearly driving me to the point of madness, but I pretended not to notice. The murmurs grew more intense, but I didn't dare enhance my hearing to hear what it was about. If I could make a good guess, the talks about me that would be passed around were most likely mockeries and jests. After the impressive display I showed in the second test and daring to seat among the geniuses, I still failed.
Shit.
I shut off my hearing, refusing to listen to the comments of everyone around me that were bound to be scathing beyond recovery. Even Stefan and Maria were staring at me. I felt like I would die from nervousness, but I kept my focus on the panel above me. From number 100 upward, I scanned through the list, still not finding my name. It was a foolish venture, but I continued. Was it due to the false hope I had that by some miracle I would see my name there? If so, then I was truly pathetic. Skimming through the names, I passed number 50 and kept ascending, feeling my hopes dwindle and die out. I reached the top 10 and my despair grew larger. The creeping fear of failure that had hidden itself was already rearing its ugly head, ready to completely devour me. I knew it in my heart. This was the end. 7th place, not me. 6th place, not me. 5th place. 5th place. 5th place. My already tired eyes began widening in surprise as the dying hope within me began shining bright. Countless thoughts invaded my mind as I struggled to understand. However, upon reading it over and over again, I understood. Truly, without a doubt. The 5th place was mine. 5th place. Name, Jared Leonard. Age, 12 years. First test score, 100. Second test score, 100. Third test score, 1. Total score, 201. Mana core grade. Mana core grade concentration, 100%. You have been accepted as a student of Ainslark Academy. My jaws nearly dropped and my eyes nearly popped from their sockets the moment I laid eyes on my result. Slowly, my memory returned as I remembered skimming through the 5th position, already assuming it wouldn't belong to me. Why did I not even notice? I thought to myself. Perhaps I had been so used to my name that I had unintentionally passed it. Maybe I didn't think I would get that high in the first place. My confidence had been stunted by what was going on around me, so I had lost composure for a moment. The reason I skipped it didn't matter anymore. What was important was that I passed. A grin formed on my face as I looked in Legris Damien's direction. He gave a short smile and nodded slightly. I was relieved and happy he had told me. Though no rule prevented him from telling me directly, no one would go out of their way for a mere entrant, especially one with a core like mine. So, you're still looking forward to our next time, huh? Very well. I won't disappoint you. My lips curled up in a wide smile, happy to the point of tears. I had finally passed one of the hurdles I could never attain in my past life, officially studying magic, not as a scholar, but as a magic user. With my mind relieved, I loosened my ears, and floods of sounds entered. The murmurs of people which I had ignored came rushing in to the point which I couldn't ignore anymore. Amazing. He got perfect scores on both first and second tests. I told you, you guys weren't there when he performed his spell. That guy is a beast. But what's with his mana core? Why is it still white? You think there was an error in grading him? Ainslark wouldn't make such a silly mistake. I don't understand. How could he? Don't tell me. Yeah, I think so. He probably cheated. Maybe he's with a magic artifact that allowed him to pass the test or something. There's no way a white core grade could achieve what he did. So, in the end, he was no big deal, huh? That's too bad. Let's just avoid him. I sighed as I heard the public opinion of me drift from favorable to the opposite. Were these people stupid? This was the most prestigious institute for learning magic, yet these fools had the notion that I somehow cheated. Were they so desperate to refute the achievement of someone with a white core grade? Their minds just couldn't accept it, so they went for another impossible answer instead. In any case, I didn't care anymore. As long as I had gotten in, that was all that mattered at this point. "Hey, Jared Leonard." I heard a voice coming from beside me. Recognizing the voice clearly as well as the rude tone that the owner used, I rolled my eyes as I slightly tilted my face toward Stefan's location. His face once again surprised me. He didn't have the usual haughty expression as before. Instead, a deeper glint of frustration was evident in his eyes. Those eyes told me one simple fact: he was angry. "How did you do it?" His voice had a slight hint of emotion attached to it. Was he curious about how I was able to get so high in the test while having a white mana core grade? Well, what can I dash? I'm not joking around right now.
Stefan snapped.
It was only for a moment, but his arms twitched as he formed a fist. The boy was really beating himself up internally. He had lost overall to Maria, but he was still on top in the first test. That had provided him with enough comfort to accept his second place. However, not only had I gotten a perfect score in the first stage, but I also managed to trump the girl who surpassed him in the second test. In essence, I just proved myself to be better than them in their specialties. That was a slap on their faces. "It's a family secret." I smiled amusedly at the young boy. Stefan fidgeted the moment he heard those words and glared at me slightly. Surely, he hadn't forgotten the implied insult he gave me once he realized I was from the Leonard family. Even though my household was a prominent noble family, in the realm of magic we were laughed at. I intended to change that. Seated beside him was Maria. She glanced at me with her clear blue eyes, a contrast to the deep and cloudy one Stefan possessed. Her expression was blank, rather, it was stiff. It appeared like she wanted to say something to me, but refrained from doing so. Even though I wasn't even ranked first, second, or even third, why was it that all eyes were on me instead of others? I suppose it was a given for Maria and the others since they must have been well known as prodigies and youngsters with potential, unlike me. I was a dark horse, the wild card that appeared out of nowhere and shook the expectations of everyone present. A white core grade magic user scoring a perfect score on the first two tests, cut short only by the score of his core itself. This was bound to bring quite a deal of attention. However, I wasn't averse to that. In fact, I welcomed it. What sort of fool would have potential and power but keep it to himself? To truly become great and achieve incredible feats, I needed equally powerful and talented allies. However, no powerful ally would appreciate joining forces with a weakling.
Even I wouldn't. To attract the strong,
I must become strong as well.
Or at least, appear to be.
Now that you have all seen your results, we shall now finalize this event. Desmond Lawcroft said with a booming voice, interrupting the many sounds that permeated the hall. As for those who aren't among the 100, several doors are appearing to your right and left. Please take any of those doors and leave this hall immediately.
Ouch.
Was what I thought as soon as Desmond uttered those words. These people were still recoiling from the shock of failing in their hopes and dreams, yet no condolences were made, not even a few moments given for the rejects to pull themselves together. In unadulterated words, this man was telling them to get the heck out. I heard chairs shifting and people rising from their positions obediently. Murmurs and whispers of saddened people became the new anthem in the large hall as they all went toward the several doors that suddenly appeared just like Damien said. There were about 8 to the right and 8 to the left. This sped up the process of leaving the hall for this who had passed. As I watched on, I couldn't help but feel for them slightly. I had a similar experience when my dreams were dashed the moment it was revealed that I could never use magic. Unfortunately, not everyone could reincarnate like me.
Or could they? I had no idea.
In a few minutes, the 3,900 failures left the hall, not wanting to delay for even a second and expand their shame. As soon as the last one left, the doors vanished and those who passed, i.e. me and 99 others, were left on the sparse seats that seemed so many now that a majority of us had left. The hall appeared way larger than it was before since we were the only ones occupying it. I felt uncomfortable and wanted Damien, or whoever would do it, to show us into Ainslark and have things over with, but no one did such a thing. After waiting for a few seconds, I realized it. The evaluations weren't over yet. Looking at the expression of those around me, it appeared I wasn't the only one who thought that. A wave of unease filled the hall. Relax, everyone. You have all passed the exams and are eligible to be students of Ainslark Academy. That much is guaranteed. The moment Damien said this, the unease lessened, but didn't vanish entirely. And that's simply because he wasn't done yet. Despite you all passing, the procedure of this academy is still at play. Do you all remember what you were told before you started your first test? Yes, your scores determine your status within Ainslark, especially your core grade.
I sighed.
I thought I had completely avoided that, but it seemed that this troublesome thing had come to bite me in the butt yet again.
Tisk.
Ainslark Academy works in accordance with the class system. There are 3 specific stages to transverse in order to be considered a full-fledged mage and be eligible for graduation. This will all be explained in your orientation. However, there is an important explanation that can't wait until then: the true meaning of the class system.
Here it comes. I gulped.
Each stage in Ainslark Academy is divided into 3 classes. The upper class for the talented, the middle class for those with potential, and the lower class for those who are neither talented nor have potential. My eyes widened as soon as I heard this, and I heard equally shocking gasps from a few in the hall. Despite passing the exam, they still segmented students like this to clearly differentiate those who would rise higher in the realm of magic and those who were doomed to remain average. This method didn't exist in the past, neither was it recorded in the materials I read about the academy. Considering the surprise of everyone else in the room, they weren't aware of it as well. That meant it was a fairly new system. This class system is a new policy that the academy has adopted, and it's highly efficient. In essence, even though 100 of you passed, you won't be in the same class. That much was a given. The bigger question in everyone's mind was what I wanted an answer to. My eyes focused on Desmond's lips as he uttered the words. While your other test results have to do with it, the major criteria for measuring the class you all belong to is your mana core grade.
I knew it.
No one needed to tell me the class I belonged to, it was obvious. No matter what glamorous score I obtained on the first and second tests, it was inconsequential. After all, my score for the mana core grade test was a mere 1. Your classes will be announced during your orientation tomorrow. For now, you will be taken into the main academy and shown into your dorms. You will do well to relax while you can. As Damien told us a few other things, such as the provision of our daily necessities such as clothes, food, and other staple items, he rounded up by congratulating us on passing. His eyes were mainly focused on Stefan and Maria though.
I could tell.
He didn't even glance at me for a second, even though my seat was just a short distance from theirs. I guess he doesn't care for a white core grade. As soon as he was done addressing us, he vanished into thin air, using the same whirlwind spell he used earlier. I observed the spell closely and figured out its workings. A small smile appeared on my face. Soon, I would also be able to perform such magic. That feeling alone was enough to banish the unease and disappointment I had concerning the class system the academy had adopted. I was certain I would fall into the lower class, and because of that, access to the privileges of the higher classes wouldn't be granted to me.
It was such a shame indeed.
But I didn't give in to despair for a second. After all, it didn't matter what the academy did to pull me down in the end. Sooner or later, they won't be able to ignore me. Once that time arrived, the academy would have no choice but to promote me to the level I deserved.
I just had to be patient.